Something great that might go unnoticed in both Affinity Designer and Photo and probably Publisher coming up is the Snapshot integration. So what you can do is actually store a state of your document in history and have it save with your document when you do actually make changes to it. So here I have a basic photo I might try to make look a little more vintage. So what we can do is maybe store a snapshot at this given state. So you can go to Document, Add Snapshot, and I'll just set this as our default state. And you can always go back up and see that state in this drop-down menu. So if you go to Restore Snapshot, you can see that state there once it's saved. So what we can do now is make some quick edits to this photo, probably adjust some curves. I like to do that initially, just kind of a bump in the S curve, very minimal edit there. And then I like to go into the levels, bump up the whites a bit, and then we'll decrease the gamma. And it'll kind of give it that fuzzy vintage feel, which I like. Older photos have this if you've ever printed any outside of the digital realm. So with that edit, we can go back in and make a new snapshot and call this, let's say, initial edits. And then what's great is you can go and restore that default state. If say you want to go back from the beginning and start over, you can do that, and it'll bounce back to that initial state. You see our edits and our layers are gone, so everything's back to the original state of the document. But what's great is you can always go back to that initial edit if you want. So you might wonder how you can edit those snapshots as you see them in this menu. There's no inline edit or anything to do in that menu. So what you can do is go to View, Studio, Snapshots, and it has its own dialog window, which is great. So you can always create new snapshots based on your next edits, or again, revert back to initial ones. So maybe we'll go one step further and make this maybe just desaturate this a tad. Maybe we'll go ahead and add an HSL filter on this layer. We need to select the layer first, so let me do that and add this. You'll see it come into view in our layers panel. And I'll edit that just to maybe desaturate a tad. So it's got a little less color in the actual frame, and then maybe bump the luminosity a bit, again, to make this vintage look come to life. And then we can go again and store a snapshot and say HSL shift, just to kind of give us a key term of what is happening. So now we can just basically bounce between these states and restore back based on what you select in this dialog. So you have to select it first and then hit this state of the icon, and again with this one. So we can always go back and forth between those just to see what's happening over time. And one thing to note is when you do a lot of these snapshots, that data does save with the file. So you might see a file size increase. So that's something to be aware of when you do this a lot in your document. If you're playing around with different ideas or concepts, this is a great route to go. I would recommend doing that as opposed to just saving quite a bit of snapshots. But maybe you're experimenting with a process that you'll do to a lot of photos. This is a great way to approach that. So I would say this feature is in comparison with layer comps in Photoshop, if you've ever used those, which is a way to save a state of whatever layers may be hidden at any moment. The same was with if they're present, and you can just define what that state looks like. In designs, when I was using Photoshop, I would be designing for web at the time, and I would save each layer comp as a page of the design. So each design would have its own folder in Photoshop, and I could easily show other designers what I'm doing in the process with the snapshots. So the layer comps are a very similar approach in Affinity Photo. So this is a quick tip for that. Definitely make use of this if you find yourself just toying around with edits, things you could do on the fly. See what you could compare and contrast, and see what you like over time. So hopefully you found this useful. If you have any tips Hopefully you found this useful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those below. Thanks for watching.